You're listening to the REITE Club podcast, where the focus is all about helping you grow your real estate investment portfolio and live the life you want to live. Come grow with us and join our community at thereiteclub.com. And now your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.
You know, I think you said something when you started talking in this little bit of the discussion about, you know, how do I do this and how do I do that? Because I think that's a really common theme for especially people who are just getting started, like the how do I's, and I call them the cursed hows, because so often we get caught up in how do I, and it really, if you only focus on the hows, you're never going to do anything, because there's always a how do I do this and how do I do that. There are people out there who can help you figure that out, right? You pick up the phone, you ask somebody, you go to the REITE Club, event, you talk to people. People can tell you how to do something, so you don't really have to worry about that. It's the why you're doing it and what you're doing that's really, really important. So you obviously had a lot of hows, but you set those aside and went off anyway and took your road trip and really figured out what was going on and why you wanted to do this and what you wanted to do. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people don't really think about, obviously, because you are now really, really successful by any measure.
Absolutely. And I think surrounding yourself and doing your research on, what city you want to invest in, doing your research on the numbers, surrounding yourself with professionals, getting involved with the REITE Club and the education they can provide you and so on and so forth through their membership and the other professionals that are in the REITE Club as well. I mean, you can't put a price on that. It really, really will yield you probably save you a lot of money and maybe help you avoid some common mistakes down the road and just give you overall that confidence you need to take that step and just get in the market. At the end of the day, you got to get in the market. Like, you can't score unless you're on the ice, right? You got to get on the ice and shoot to score. So my advice, deal with as many professionals as you can. Get involved with the right people, surround yourself with a good team of professionals. Maybe joint venturing's for you, maybe it's not, but I definitely made a lot of mistakes, cost me some money. I bounced back without any hesitation. But maybe joint venturing and working with a professional will help you avoid those mistakes, give you that confidence. And then maybe the second property you do on your own or the third property you do on your own, and then you start to joint venture and kind of coach people as well and whatnot. But like you said, there's so many people out there that can help you be successful in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like you said, surround yourself with those people. So now that you have 10 years of experience, can you share early on what were some of the things that you wish you knew how to do, or that you wish that you did not do, or that you did do, like as in, maybe some mistakes that, or some things that you went through that you can share so that somebody listening to this can learn, from your 10 years ago self?
What things did I learn? I kind of touched upon it as far as surrounding yourself with a really strong team. Could I go back and start from the beginning?
What would you do differently?
Probably have 300 doors now. What I would do differently is start off with a coach and or a mentor and or a joint venture partner, because they could really cut down your learning curve and they could really help you accelerate quicker. Now, if your goal is, and again, my goal was to have 2 properties, and now we're over 50. So that kind of went by the wayside quickly, but I could probably have a lot more. In the time I wasted, it took me probably 2-3 years to really learn what I was doing, and hiring a coach or a mentor or a joint venture partner could have really accelerated that learning curve for me. And yes, you have to pay for that, whether it's coaching, some sort of mentorship or joint venture, but I can't stress enough how that's so worth the money. you know, it really, really is worth the money. And again, whether it's coaching or becoming a member of the REITE Club and networking with different professionals, that's so huge. And I never did that. I never did that because being a police officer, when I started, most police officers don't trust anybody. It's just the nature of the job and the nature of the people you deal with every day, and everybody's a liar and nobody tells the truth. And, you know, most police officers, I'm talking at a turn here, but most police officers really don't like people because they deal with the worst of the worst every day. So I had that same mentality as opposed to opening up my mind and trusting people. That could really accelerated me, because when I was buying and stuff in Hamilton 10 years ago, I wish I would have, the other mistake I did, I wish I would have bought 20 properties my first year and not 2. Because today, those properties, everything I bought 10 years ago is more than doubled in value. And I still have those properties in my portfolio. We were buying legal triplexes for $300,000, fully renovated. And now you can't touch triplexes in Hamilton in a distressed state, you know, typically 2,000 square feet, 2,200 square feet, distressed. In the market today, you're 550,000 all day long. So when I would say coaching, mentorship, joint ventures, and mindset of abundance could really accelerate and help in your success. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Some great insights for sure. Some great, things for the REITE Club Nation to be able to, jot down and take some action on, move forward on. How long did it take you from the first, time that you bought that property when you started until you left your job and you were able to successfully say, I don't need that police, income anymore?
From the very first property I bought, I want to say 7 years. 7 years, and can't remember the total amount of cash flow I was generating for me to financially be able to take that step. But 7 years, start day one to the day I left my $140,000 a year police officer job.
I think it's really interesting when you talk about years, because I can just see some people listening to this and going, 7 years? I don't have 7 years. Like, that's a long time. But what we often forget is that 7 years is going to pass whether you invest or whether you don't. So there's no better time to start investing in real estate than right now, because 7 years from now, if you don't, you're going to look back and say, damn it, I didn't invest, right? And right. You did it. And now you're doing what you want to do.
Right. And life goes by so quick, right? Like, before you know it, 5 years is like a blink of an eye. So really 7 years for financial freedom in the big picture, it's like, it really is so quick, to the point where you could walk away, from $140,000 a year income, pension, benefits, the whole 9 yards. I turned that around in 7 years, and it's really nothing at the end of the day.
No, it's not. It took me 7 years as well. It does fly by, and I'm glad I did it too, right? Like, literally, I started investing in October 2013 and left my full-time job October 1st of 2020. So roughly, the same timeline. So, you have a family, you've got a spouse, were they on board with you saying bye to that career?
I think it was actually my spouse that kind of pushed me, because I was juggling both things at the same time. And I was burning the candle at both ends, really. And financially, like I said, I didn't need to continue with the police career. And she kind of pushed me towards, we're good. We have the passive income coming through the properties, the cash flow. you know, you're killing yourself. Because I would go to work night shift, come home, sleep for 3 hours, run out to Hamilton, you know, go check out more properties, go check on my properties, show some of my units to prospective tenants for vacancies. Then I'd go back in for night shift again with 3 hours sleep. So I was getting old pretty quick, and yeah, I had the full support from her, and she actually was a contributing factor to it's time to hang it up and move on with life.
That's awesome that you had that support.
Mm-hmm.
I did too. Actually, Matt was telling me to leave like a year, and a year I was stalling. But you know, at some point it makes sense, right? And then you just have to just trust in the, you know, what you've built so far and take the leap. So
I would just like to add in there, Sarah, I also told you to leave a year ago.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, everyone was telling me to leave, but you know what, in a way, it was not the right timing. You know, my boss's spouse or wife was very sick. So like the timing just didn't work out. And then, you know, things happened, and you know, it made sense at the time that it made sense. And I think it was not so much the income and what I had as much as it is the loyalty to people that have always been there for me too, which is a big factor. So when did you start utilizing joint ventures? At what stage, and how quickly did that propel you to your 200 plus units that you have now?
Really took off in 2017. The market was crazy hot, kind of like it is now in 2017. And again, we had built up a portfolio of 5 rental properties, all multifamilies, again, in the city of Hamilton. And we started to develop a team of professionals that we dealt with, right from, you know, the mortgage components to construction to, you know, our lawyers, accountants, stuff like that. So we had everything in place, and we felt confident enough to be able to deliver what we were saying we were going to deliver based on our experience. So after 5 properties in 2017, we decided to start marketing ourselves and whatnot, and attract different investors. And it just exploded. In that year, I probably did, I don't know, 20 deals that year as far as joint ventures go. And since then, it's just been a continual progression since 2017. So I think when you start to joint venture, you have to really bring an expertise to the table and have that person who's going to provide a lot of money, because for the most part, obviously our joint ventures are bringing the capital to the table, and we are executing on that capital. So people are bringing a lot of money to the table and trusting us with it. So I really wanted to make sure I was the real deal and I had everything in place, and not just, obviously not just my first rodeo, so to speak. And it's kind of really, obviously after retirement, then became a full-time business for us, where we do it as a business now.
So, I mean, you say that you decided to joint venture, and I know that's definitely a shift in the mind, right? You have to, because you're used to doing it by yourself, and then you got to go out to other people, as almost like all of us do, unless we have, you know, millions and millions and millions of dollars in our back pocket. When most of us don't, you got to go out to other people. So, but when you say you marketed yourself, like, what did you do? Like, how did you think about it? And how did you approach people, I guess? And I know we could spend a whole couple of hours on this, but it just isn't sort of an overview. Like, what was your initial thoughts, and how did that change a little bit as you went along?
So we had tapped out on our debt service with respect to lending and getting a conventional mortgage after having, so the 5 properties plus our principal res. Our debt ratio now was at a peak, and we'd have to go to a B lender to get traditional financing. So rather than doing that, it was still an option, because I think the numbers back then would have still worked. But in networking with my business partner, Sandy McKay, Sandy runs a podcast as well. And Sandy interviewed me on his podcast when we got into business together, or shortly thereafter, and kind of told my story and our level of experience. And essentially, yeah, if anybody wants help, or they're looking potentially to a joint venture and want some help with that, or get into business together, here's my contact information. And a lot of investors, I guess my story and, my background resonated with them, and they started reaching out. So I was getting calls and emails, and that's how it started. Hey, Adrian, I just heard the podcast. That's amazing. Really like your story. Can we meet for coffee? And then, most of the time it's a good fit depending on what their goals are, what our goals are, and kind of networked that way and built up the business just from that original mindset and podcast at the time.
Thanks for listening to the REITE Club podcast and joining our community of real estate investors online at thereiteclub.com, where the focus is about helping you grow. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks from your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.